What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are. It's the end of the month. We're about to enter into September. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about from the Clausura perspective in Paraguay, the Copa Paraguay perspective. Obviously, our Paraguayans abroad. It's been a eventful week, I would say, in the last time that we recorded, but. I guess we have to go straight to Fede right now because I feel like this has nothing to do with football, but right now the big talking point is the rally over there in Encarnacion. Their big world rally that they do over there in Encarnacion that brings up a lot of people. So that shows that Paraguay continues to be on the map on a sporting perspective, but football, of course, never stops. As we were talking with Ralph here before we got in the air, that there's been games in the Clausura, there's been games in the Copa Paraguay. There's been Albiroja as well, not the senior team, but the youth level. We saw that with the U20 beating Uruguay yesterday. So football never stops, even if it feels like all the attention is giving on another sport over there in the country.
Yeah, we've had enough to be entertained these last couple of days. Hi to you, Roberto. Hi to Ralph. Great to see Ralph back at home. And here we are once again to do Guarani Vision, another episode with, a week with just so many events stacked with many games to follow here in our country and also sporting events, just like you mentioned. Maybe the attention is more over there in Encarnacion. I'm not that much of a car fan. I got to tell you, I got to be honest with you guys. I know we're living in a very important time where you got Dwerksen doing his thing in Formula 2. We're looking forward to him eventually making it to Formula One, and obviously here in Paraguay, the rally is such a big thing with Rally del Chaco, the tradition, and now with the World Rally Championship these last couple of years, just gaining so much attention, and it is just such a huge sporting event because of how many people move because of this sporting event, not just our local people, but the people that come into the country. We've had so much visitors lately also because of that event. But going back to football, guys, I mean, we had a Copa Paraguay this week. We had important games also. I would say if we look back even to the Superclasico, our predictions, I was right about Olimpia. I'm happy about that. I was also right about the sack of Holland and how big of an impact it could have if they lost that game. And it was just about that kind of week, right? I mean, Cerro was just all about losing their coach and the new one just arriving right away. Apparently, they already had a backup plan, right, with Gustavo Costas, and they really shut up every fan right away because I think they made the right call, or at least it feels that way if you're bringing up a coach that was just champion not long ago of the Sudamericana. So you're bringing someone in that looks like knows what Cerro kind of needs right now.
Yes, absolutely. Certainly something that's been in the rumbles for quite some time if the results didn't go the way of Cedro's case. But, obviously, Ralph, I guess we can go on some more positive news before we get into sort of the negative news on Cedro and maybe some silver linings for them eventually. But obviously, we need to send our shout out to Florencia Cáceres, who this week, I should say, committed to the University of South Florida. She'll be playing for the South Florida Bulls, a D1 team over there in the state of Florida and in I think in Tampa, yes, in Tampa as well. So, clearly something that is exciting. And of course, she makes some history as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's the first ever Paraguayan to play D1 college soccer in the US. Well, women's soccer. So there's been lots of players that ended up going through and playing in the US, and I think we've talked about that on a show before, where it was actually a bit of a strategy for a time, right, to try and get some college time in the US and then go back to Paraguay. In this case, with Flor, she's actually at the very top level now, and so. That's a really high standard. And remember, this is somebody that played with Claudia Martinez, who's in obviously Washington Spirit now, and will be joining up, I'm sure, with the Albiroja soon as well, because she's played U17. She'll be moving up soon, U20s, and then maybe eventually the national team. So yeah, great for her, friend of the show, right? That we've had on before for an interview. You guys can check that out. And congratulations for making more history for Paraguayan women's football because we had Claudia this year with NWSL and now we have D1 college soccer. So it just shows what how it's growing, right? Women's soccer has been growing in Paraguay and improving.
Absolutely. And obviously, It's such a big market for us here to really focus on Paraguayans that are in the United States. Obviously we do our good coverage on that. So yes, congratulations to Flor for making that commitment to a big school and of course to further education and hopefully into a better career as well. Let's switch gears to what we saw over there at the Defensores on the weekend. We saw Olimpia taking on Cerro Porteño, a game that, certainly for both these two teams, they needed to win because of how badly they started the Clausura. Obviously, Olimpia and Cerro Porteño were both coming off of eliminations from the continental competition, Cerro from the Libertadores and Olimpia from the Sudamericana. So this was kind of their saving grace if there was a results that would favor one of the two. And it feels like the winner would be back in the Clausura race while the loser kind of is out of it. And we saw what was really an interesting game. Obviously we saw Tim Kaine score starting actually for Olimpia, and certainly becoming an effective player. And then obviously it came to Cerro Porteño that took the first blow from Alexis Cañete in the 44th minute, right before halftime, put them in a really good spot. But then Olimpia just bounced back. Eduardo Delma, someone who I predicted that was going to score, ended up scoring the equalizer before Hugo Sandoval scoring just minutes later to give Olimpia the 2-1 win, Fede, and put them right into the race because, yeah, right now at the time of recording, they're 9 points, just a couple of just 6 points behind Libertad, but of course, they still got to play them as well. They still got to deal with, a lot of those games as well. Whereas Cedro, ninth place, 6 points, you really feel it's going to be a hard time to really track back for both of them. So I think in this case, like you said, and you predicted, of course, Olimpia winning this game, you kind of felt like the race is still on for them to go and try to contend and win the bicampeonato over there, yeah, in the Clausura.
Yeah, I'm no wizard after winning that one, but it did kind of look like it could fall into Olympia's side just because of how the mood was in every locker room, right? I mean, Olimpia was champion of the Apertura. They still believed in their coach, I think, and I didn't feel the same thing from Cerro players with their coach after being eliminated with Palmeiras. I never felt like he really got a hold of that team. That the style of play was just never there. And in Olympia, they really have the roster also in the middle of having to play that international match of Sudamericana not too long ago and needed to face now a big game against Cerro Porteño, the Superclasico. So you knew that going into this game, both teams were gonna go with their rotation, and you saw a lot of that. You just mentioned Tim Payne. Yeah, he's still not a starter, but they needed him in this game. They kind of wanted him to show his stuff also in the Super Classico, and it was good. I think game by game he's showing that he's up to the level of what Olympia is expecting from him, and I think now and after seeing a couple of games from him, I think he's up to even fighting for the starting role. I think he's gonna give Raúl Cáceres a tight affair there. So it could be interesting. It's nice to have that competition. I think every coach wants that. That's why they bring these kind of players, even though you already have a starter there. And then you had important performances, just like you've had all year around from Fernando Cardoso in these kind of games. You had Richard Ortiz for coming back, the captain, and he's has so much experience in these kind of matches. And it ended up falling for Olimpia, in which it was a kind of a crazy game, I would even say. Just the way it started out and the way it just ended. I would even say Olimpia won the Super Classico in the historical way that Cerro Porteño usually wins it, right? I mean, coming back and doing and getting those goals back to back, and they even needed some of those subs to come in. You mentioned obviously Hugo Sandoval, who I think is probably even fighting for that long-term contract, right? I mean, he still needs to be re-signed by Olimpia, or Olimpia needs to officially buy him from Recoleta. He's on a loan right now, so he's fighting for those minutes. He's trying to leave his his footprint in these kind of games, and it was good for him to do it, scoring the second goal. And Eduardo Del Mas, guys, I mean, I'm looking at this kid, and he's just doing everything correctly this year. I mean, and he did it again in the Super Classico. He showed up in a big game, so. I mean, just when I was looking at this kid in the Super Classico, and I was thinking to myself, okay, hopefully he has a good game. Hopefully he doesn't make any mistakes, because that's what I want from him right now. They're talking about him being in on this team until the Libertadores of next year. So what you want to see from this guy is just develop into that star that we all see that he can be. So as of right now, Eduardo Mas just looks better and better, guys. I mean, he's becoming one of the most important players offensively as others are not showing up. So it's maybe Eduardo's Del Mas moment.
Maybe it's time for him to get a Paraguay call-up soon, isn't it, Ralph?
Well, you say that because Del Mas has had a great week, right? We're talking about the Clásico, which was on Sunday, and then yesterday, at the time of recording, he scored twice against Uruguay for the Paraguay under 20. So, I mean, he's really starting to show. I think when you look at Olympia's like young talent that they could then move on to bigger clubs, I mean, Del Mas is kind of top of that list. He's obviously a very he's like a strange case because he's a millionaire. I mean, you can't get past that. He's from a very wealthy family. So, when those very kids from very wealthy families start going through the system, there's always that question mark of, oh, is he really that good? Let's see, let's see. But obviously, now when you're at senior professional level, there's no hiding. And so he's proved that he's there because of quality. He's there because he deserves it, but he does have that slight difference of he doesn't necessarily need that big contract to go abroad, right? Whereas other players might need that more. So that's just something when you're thinking about will he move on? He's like he can definitely take his time and make a choice, but he's already like 20, right? So I think is he 19
19,
still?
19.
So okay, no, he's not 20 yet. But he's not like desperate to leave Olympia, and he's having such a great year, like you said. Scoring this goal. And then really he's been like, even though he's only 19, he's been like this kind of almost calming presence in the midfield for Olympia. And you saw that in most of the game until the end, so until they went ahead. So most of that game, even when they're 1-0 down, Olympia, they were in control of the game. They were a bit unlucky in a way to go 1-0 down to Cañete, who's, by the way, another young player that's really surprised, right? Alexis Cañete kind of came from nowhere to start playing with Cerro and is playing really well. He takes his goal very well, and it was quite interesting that he scores a really good goal on his left foot, like a minute after Vegetti missed a chance. I think Vegetti hits the post with the header, and it was like Vegetti is not finding the goals, the guy that should be, but we got a defender here who does get the goal and puts Cerro ahead, and so. But even that was against a run of play. So it was really Olimpia pushing, and Del Mas was a big part of that. In fact, he comes off in the 60 something minute, just after they've gone 2-1 up. And that's when Olimpia kind of relinquished control and let Cerro have more of the ball as they try and defend the lead. But as we saw, I mean, as we've seen a lot this year, Cerro are not really able to do much with the ball. They're actually better on the counter attack. I think that was the way Holland wanted them to play, and Sanchez was very clever, the Olympia coach, that he kind of took that sting out. He said, "Well, you guys have the ball now. We're winning. We're not going to get into that like transitional game that you are probably better than us at, and that's what you want." And this has been the problem all year for Holland as well. I think he has a very specific way he wants to play, and if other teams are able to stop him, he can't really. There's not much he can really do to counteract that. And once again, his sub at halftime didn't make a difference really, and it was Olympia subs that made the difference, right? I mean, Romeo Benitez comes on at halftime, so they reaches Sanchez because they didn't really need Alfaro and Ortiz in midfield. So Alfaro comes off for Sanchez, a bit more attacking, but Romeo Benitez comes on, and it's his assist for the second goal, which was an incredible piece of skill that he's been capable of, but he's find it very hard to do it consistently. But I mean, Benitez is playing very well again, and if he can stay injury free, which I think has kind of hampered him a bit after he left Guarani and he went to Brazil, if he can stay injury free, he's another great asset to have. So you have Del Mas on one side and you have Romeo on the other. I mean, that's a real potency that Olimpia have. And so, like you said, Roberto, at the top, like, are they fighting for the title? Well, maybe with the way they're playing. I mean, they're definitely capable of scoring and attacking, and we saw that again in the Copa Paraguay, which we'll talk about. But I mean, there's a lot to this team that could see them maybe try and push for that second title after winning the Apertura.
Fede, I mean, certainly now for Cerro Porteño, it certainly feels like an identity crisis, after losing two important games that kind of defined their season. We saw that with the sacking of Ariel Holland. Now comes in Gustavo Costas, a guy who also is known for his time at Cerro Porteño, albeit very long ago. But he comes in, he tries to be something. I don't know if it's going to be something that's going to save them in the long run. Yes, they're still in the Copa Paraguay. They beat Resistencia, so they're now in the round of 16. But I feel like you're putting a band-aid on a really big wound. Like you don't know if this is going to be fixed. And I gotta say, Fed, I think this might, even if whatever happens to Costas this year, like okay, maybe the saving grace could be the Copa Paraguay if they're lucky. But who's to say they can't take on an Olimpia or a Libertad and whatnot, and they could beat them in the final. But I think from the terms of the clausura, that it's over for that one. But I don't know. I feel like there's still more issues that the team has been going through that I don't think the hiring of Costas is going to fix that.
No, it doesn't feel that way, right? Just because of all the problems that just been accumulating, and because obviously Ariel Holland leaves because of the poor results, the elimination from Libertadores, that obviously hits the locker room and the mood every day, and now losing the way that they lost the Superclasico and maybe even a dramatic way. But like for Holland, I think it was the end of the road, just losing these important games. I mean, you just couldn't go forward with him, and the players they were never with the coach either. You never felt like they were really responding to what he wanted and what Ralph said. I mean, they were playing more on the counter attack when you wanted to see more of a big team kind of style, and they never got that from Holland either. Maybe because he didn't pick the right players, or they couldn't bring the players that he wanted. Also, in this last transfer window that was pretty long during the World Cup, so you were expecting for him to eventually build that team with the right players, and he didn't do that. I mentioned that right before the Superclásico. The players that he brought, they weren't available. They didn't make the difference. The goalkeeper, players in defense, attackers, and especially the playmaker, right? That they never had in that midfield. So I'm looking at his numbers. It was 22 games total. He only won 8. He lost 9. So I mean, he had to go because of the bad results and just because of the pressure. And every time you heard him in press conference, it was just about excuses. It was never about building what was coming for this team. So maybe bringing Gustavo Costas is the right call right now, just because of the way he likes to motivate teams, just because the way he likes to shake up the locker room. I think he's going to come with the right energy to maybe pick up the guys from here till the end of the year, because they really need that. They need a leader to maybe take that pressure from them, right? From the Turbes, from the Cecilio Dominguez, and maybe he has enough to do that right now after everything he's won with Racing, especially. So and he came right away and he said it, guys. I mean, I know that Cerro hasn't won an international cup. I'm coming for that. I mean, he's not aiming for the local league. He knows what the fans want, and he's very smart about that. He knows what the fans want to hear. So I think he's going to get the fans right on his side right away. And then we'll see about the team, because there he needs to make so many decisions going forward. And I'm talking about the leaders, the players that are going to play, because Holland was using the old players. He was using all the players that he only wanted, not the ones that were really deserving to be out there. So I'm hoping that Gustavo Costas puts the right players out there, and that they're that intense football that we saw from Racing. That was his last team, and I love the way that team played at a certain moment. I mean, that team blew a couple of Brazilian teams also in the Libertadores, and that's what Cerro Porteño fans want to see. An intense football. They want to see an attacking team, and they never got that from Ariel Holland. Is Gustavo Costas the right one? He was probably one of the best ones that was out there in the market, Rob. I don't know if you're on with me with this one, but he's been in the Paraguayan league before. He's been in Cerro's locker room before. He's probably one of the best options you had.
Yeah, I think in terms of short term and trying to salvage his year, he's the best option you can find, because the problem with Cerro is that they keep starting projects but not willing to see them through. And so you've had sporting directors, right? You had Fernando Jubero with Manolo, and they kind of went out. That didn't quite work. And then they brought in Weiner, who did very well to get Cerro the championship. But he left because of the elections, the presidential elections. That was at the end of last year or beginning of this year. So then you had Hernan Diaz and everyone that, like a bunch of Argentinians that came in. They've all left now because of they were kind of more tied to Holland. So it's like they keep having these projects bigger than a manager, but they're not actually seeing it through because everything gets chopped and changed every time they seem to change a coach. So now you have Costas, who I guess won't come in with such a big entourage, maybe as your some of your previous managers, and like Fede says, he knows the league, he knows the maybe the limits as well of kind of Paraguayan football. It's not trying to manage everything remotely from Argentina, and there was a lot of ways they were trying to impose, I think, a style that wasn't necessarily going to work. So Costas can do that, and short term could work. But then you still think, I mean, you think about his age, and you think about, is he really going to lead a long-term revolution in Cerro? Probably not either. So I feel we're going to have this conversation in a year again if, let's say, they get knocked out in Libertadores last 16. So the main issue I think for Cerro is, yeah, there doesn't seem to be some of this planning, and they always find themselves in this situation where, okay, oof, we need someone that can deliver now, because you can't afford to miss out on Libertadores, so they have to make sure they have enough points in the cumulativo. And so we need someone, and so Costas is that guy. I mean, now is a question of, yeah, let's start winning some games. If he can start on Sunday against another Cerro legend, Nelson Aido, is obviously managing Libertad, who are the league leaders, then that would be very exciting. Then you'll start to think, oh, something's happening. But if he was to lose at the weekend, maybe have like some unconvincing results early on, then suddenly like you're in the same position that you have been for most of the year, where you just feel like Cerro hasn't got going and hasn't found their style. So there's so many questions going out there, but whatever happens with Costas, like, he's a short-term fix. I don't think we're finding yet the long-term solution that Cerro really needs. Like, where are these young players are going to start producing again? Because we're seeing lots of them, like in the Copa Paraguay yesterday, we saw like Carlos Chena, could be interesting, Josue Servín. Like, some young players are coming through, but you don't feel like there was a time where they were just producing, selling, and you were like, wow, there's a whole, conveyor belt of players. But with everything that's going on with these sporting directors getting thrown in, taken out, managers coming in, getting reserve team coaches that they're not even using in some cases, which has just happened. It's like there doesn't seem to be a real process going on. So there's a lot to work out, I think, for Seattle.
Yes, there's a lot to work on for them, and obviously, let's see what Costas can do to try to fix this as best as they can. Obviously, like I mentioned, they have the Copa Paraguay. They'll be taking on Rio Nu in the next round, and some of the games that we'll be seeing in the round of 16. San Lorenzo against Cuatro de Mayo. They're still alive. Cuatro de Mayo are still alive after beating Fluminense Yergos a couple of weeks ago. Then we have Atlético Tembetaril taking on Sportivo Iteño. Dos de Mayo against Sol de América. Olimpia taking on Sportivo Luqueño. Recoleta against Guarani, Fernando Lamora against Libertad, and Independiente of Campo Grande against Nacional. I mean, Fede, I mean, are there some ties that stick out to you? I mean, the fact that Cuatro de Mayo are still alive in this stage that's the one I guess everyone wants to focus on outside of the big teams, of course.
Yeah, I'm always rooting for my intermediate teams, right? My second division teams, because those are the teams that I always follow all year round. But unfortunately, they look really tired, and most of the strong teams, the ones that are fighting to eventually make it to first division, they put pretty much all their subs in, so they weren't able to get through. I'm talking about Benjamín Aceval, 12 de Junio. Those are the teams that have really looked really well this season. Also, Santani, that was eliminated this week. I saw them really tired in their game against the first division team. That's still the big difference there. I mean, physically, I mean, guys, I mean, you have a Recoleta that put pretty much their alternative team, their B team, maybe even players that are over 40 years old, and they still were much better than a second division team like Santani that has a lot of players that even went through those youth programs in first divisions in big teams. So that's still my thing going forward with this Copa Paraguay. It just looks like it's going to be again this 2026 for a team from first division. Even though last year we did have General Caballero that was relegated and ended up being a second division team in 2026. They're also out of competition. They're not going to be able to repeat the title. They're one of the teams that were eliminated in this round of 32 teams, but we're down to 16. And maybe I'm not rooting anymore for my intermediate teams. Maybe I'm rooting for Cuatro de Mayo. That's the only team that survived from the UFI, from the teams from the countryside. So it could be one of the interesting teams to follow as we're heading into the round of 16. And obviously with Olimpia, with Cerro Porteño in there, they were able to do their thing in their games. It draws a lot more attention, right, to the Copa Paraguay after both of these teams eliminated from the international stage. Everything, most of the focus now is going to go into Copa Paraguay. Let's not forget that whoever wins it goes directly to Libertadores next year. So it's a big prize for those teams that right now they're looking at how much points they've made in this whole year, and they're thinking to themselves, hey, maybe this is my way to go. Maybe focus on the Copa Paraguay. And I'm looking at a lot of teams that might be thinking that my priority now should be the Copa Paraguay.
Yeah, it's a huge like prize to think that you could sneak into Libertadores that way. And I mean, yeah, I was just looking at some of the ties. Like Libertad, for example, Fernando de la Mora are not going to be able to do much against Libertad because they've got like relegation even worries in Intermedia. So you think Libertad will get through? Cerro facing a Rubio New that actually have their own relegation problems in Primera. So again, Cerro should push through. Olimpia Luqueño could be a good one because Luqueño, if you know they don't have as much to play for, so maybe this is the area they start to target. So we might get a nice tie there, but I think it will start to gravitate as we usually see at this stage. Like it starts to gravitate towards the Primera teams making the big leaps. But it's been a fun tournament. I did get to catch one game. I don't know if I mentioned last week, right, on with Nacional winning against Benjamin Aceval, and Nacional's a team to watch out for because I mean Roque keeps scoring. He scored again, by the way, at the weekend, and they keep finding ways to win. And I think Nacional are probably they're probably one of the best teams, still in the competition that aren't fighting for the title or aren't in relegation. So Nacional's definitely one to keep an eye on as well because they could spring a surprise.
Yes, it'll be very fun to see what happens there. And obviously we got a lot to talk about in regards to what we see now with our Paraguayans abroad because we have one move that happened this week that I think is a big one and is of course Orlando Gill making the move from San Lorenzo to Lille, the goalkeeper that we've been trying to see what kind of move he gets. He finally gets his move. It's been rumored for quite some time of him making that move after the World Cup that he had. He finally gets his chance to play for Lille. He signed a 5-year contract with them. And a Lille team, Ralph, that actually is doing very well. They finished if you remember, third in Ligue 1 last year, and they'll be playing in the Champions League. We'll mention in a bit, but they got David Ancelotti, the son of Carlo Ancelotti, in his first stint as a European boss, and got some good players in there. Oliver Giroud, Ethan Mbappe, Kylian Mbappe's brother, is on that team as well. So it's a very interesting team, but nevertheless, Orlando Gill is going to battle it out with Berke Özer, the Turkish goalkeeper, someone that even at the announcement said that he was still going to be the starter. So Orlando Gill comes in as a backup for the time being. But of course, now, like I mentioned, with these games happening for Lille and of course an increased competition because they'll be playing in the Champions League, like I said. And just looking at some of the games real quick that they'll be playing, but certainly it's a very interesting sort of way for Hill to make his first move into Europe. I think it was the best move that he could make out of all the ones that have been rumored. He had been rumored to Olympiacos, to Manchester United, to Juventus, but I think with Lille, I think having the experience of playing in a league that you could still have a bunch of eyeballs on them and you could still do well, I think just it's a good move overall. I think there's a lot of positive things that could be said about this, and I'm glad that Orlando was able to make it.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's a great move. You're basically in a Champions League team and you're back up to a goalkeeper that's not, a huge name in the Champions League. So he does have a chance to force his way into the team. I'm sure we've seen his history, his story, right, of so many things he's been through to get to this point. And even in the Paraguay national team, at the last minute, we thought maybe he's gonna be left out for somebody that wasn't even eligible to play for Paraguay, talking about Gaston Olveira, right? Like suddenly his chance was going to get taken away and it didn't. He took his chance, of course. And so now he'll be there kind of waiting in the wings ready for another one. And it's funny, isn't it? Football, like he threw a ball at Mbappe's head for not shaking his hand in the Paraguay-France game, and now he's playing with his brother. Um, I wonder if I wonder, what the treatment might be if he plays league games in France, because we're seeing Enzo Fernandez in England, for example, isn't getting a great reception. So the World Cup is kind of has its hangover for people. So we'll see how that goes. But I think ultimately, yeah, really good move. He's at a place where, like I say, Champions League football, he has that opportunity. He'll be able to grow as a player. And hopefully, once you establish yourself in Europe or you make that leap to Europe, then you can stay there. I mean, now he has what, 10 years left, probably at least at the top level for a goalkeeper. You can play 35 plus. So I think he's made a really good move for him. And let's see how it goes first here, but he could be in Europe for a long time to come.
Fede, just looking at some of the matches that Lille will be playing in the Champions League, because the draw was yesterday. Bayern Munich, Arsenal, Real Betis, Roma, Galatasaray, Bodo Glimt, Slovan Bratislava, and Stuttgart. Off the top of your head, I mean, look at that. I mean, can it be amazing for Orlando Gill to make his Champions League start in possibly at home against Bayern Munich or at the Emirates against Arsenal? I think Ralph would enjoy that to see a Paraguayan goalkeeper. We've seen some Paraguayans play at the Emirates or even away to Roma playing at the Olimpico over there. I mean, there is a lot of opportunity, but of course, I think it all comes from the development and of course to see how well he can do to convince Lille and the fans that he can really be a reliable goalkeeper.
Wow, he's gonna hit the ground running, right? I mean, he gets there and right away he has to play these big games. He didn't do the preseason with the team, so it's gonna be about just how fast he can adapt also to all the French around him, to this new world, for him to the new continent. I mean, it took a while, but they finally got the deal done. They were able to do it because San Lorenzo did not make it easy. They wanted to get as much out of this as possible. Obviously, they invested at the beginning of his career, and this was the leap to Europe. And you don't usually get these opportunities for young goalkeepers. Let's be honest. I mean, you look at the goalkeepers that played the World Cup, and not many of them made the leap. I mean, I was looking at the list, and obviously you have Suzuki, the Japanese, that made a real difference probably in this transfer window. But you look at the goalkeepers, and it's just so hard for them to even make these deals and to earn a lot of money, right? I mean, you have to go back to what that Chelsea deal back in 2018 when you got that record. I mean, for goalkeepers, it's really not that easy. When you think about making the right move and going to the right team and also getting those opportunities. Hopefully, he clicks right away with the rest of the team. I mean, Orlando meeting Ethan Mbappe, that's just a huge moment for me. I mean, please, someone get a camera on that because of the way that the World Cup ended, right, with his brother Kylian and not saying goodbye to Orlando. So that's going to be a moment. Eventually, they're going to talk about that, but it's going to be huge for him to have the opportunity to play against those big teams, to play in a league where lately we had Julio Enciso. So even the French now are maybe thinking to themselves, "Hey, Paraguayans, look, they got good players. They had a good Julio Enciso last year. I believe they really enjoyed what he did at Strasbourg, and now we have a young goalkeeper that I think is going just like Rob said, maybe for the long run. But if you have a couple of good matches in Champions League, let's not be surprised if this is just the first step of his career in Europe. Hopefully, it is that way because we are going to need him for the long run in the national team. I don't think anybody's thinking now of another goalkeeper like we were before the World Cup.
It's funny how things have changed in the last year, Ralph. And also, I think as well, it's a good point that you mentioned, Fede. It's a goalkeeper in Europe. We haven't had that in a long time. I think the last big one was ironically Gatito Fernandez when he went to the Netherlands, but before that it was Justo Villar, obviously
Justo
Chilavert.
Villar was the one that had the long career there, right, in
Yeah,
Spain.
exactly. But 15 years without one goalkeeper in Europe is a long time. So, and we'll talk about the players in the European competition in a bit, but this season alone, I think we're starting to see, and maybe this is the effect of the World Cup, maybe it's just luck as well, but we are kind of hopefully seeing a renaissance of Paraguayan players. Yes, the number is still low, if we have to admit that the number is still low There are no players in Spain. There are no players in Germany. Sanabria just left for Inter. That means the ones in Italy. There's only the ones in England and now the French one. So it is still low, but you would think maybe with Orlando going in, with the Paraguayans playing in the Premier League, with some of them playing in European competitions, maybe it could be the starts of players coming in. I don't know. Maybe we're just going ahead of ourselves, but do you see it as that, or is it just, we need to wait and see?
No, I think definitely for player recruitment, like when a national team does well at the World Cup, that boosts the value, obviously of the players that were there themselves, but in kind of the perception maybe of a country, because that you will look at some of those players and say, oh, they're playing in Argentina or Brazil, but they were still able to knock out Germany. They're still able to go toe to toe with France. So there is quality there. So I think it does help the whole country's like the perception of the country in terms of possible transfers. But then we've also seen I feel like people like Miguel Almiron and then now Enciso Gomez are sort of paving the way for other players to make those moves, which is why we got, for example, Diego Leon went straight from Paraguay to Manchester United, which was pretty unthinkable, before. I know he hasn't played, but just the fact that the possibility arose. So I think it's all moving in a good direction. But yeah, we do need to see, I guess, more Paraguayans playing regularly. We want to see them in Champions League, basically. I think that's where we've been missing for a long time. It's not since, I mean, Taquara, obviously Roque is a long time ago, but you had Derlis Gonzalez for a time. He was quite a regular in the Champions League, and Almiron got there eventually, right? But later in his career, with Newcastle. But yeah, I think you want to see like two or three Paraguayans in the Champions League for 2 or 3 seasons. That would be very interesting moving into Copa America and World Cup. But I think it's all moving, pointing in the right direction for sure.
Absolutely. And we actually have three Paraguayans playing in the club competitions, the Champions League, the Europa League, and the Conference League. So we just mentioned Orlando Gill playing for Lille in the Champions League. We actually had our draw for the Europa League and the Conference League before we started recording. For Sunderland, for Oman Lerete, they take on AZ of the Netherlands. Milan, AC Milan at the San Siro. What a way to go and get a good test over there. Dinamo Zagreb, Anderlecht. I'm gonna butcher this name, so forgive me if anyone's listening. Jalionia Biaskok, they're a team in Poland. Lechia Polsian, Leski Sofia of Bulgaria, and Torrense, a second division team in Portugal, but actually are playing in the Europa League because they won the Portuguese Cup there, so that was able to get them. But for Omar, I mean, Fede, the one that sticks out, wow. I mean, for Sunderland, for a team like them, who have never played in a major competition, or it's been a long time that they played in the European competition, to get now the chance to do something. And they got some big teams in that competition as well. You got teams like Benfica, Juventus, Milan, like I'd mentioned, Lyon, Marseille, but Sunderland with the I guess the attention and the money of the Premier League. I think they'll, they're with what's it called, Bournemouth and Crystal Palace as well. You would want to put them into one of the contenders of trying to do something in the Europa League and to win something. And maybe that leads to Omar having a few more eyeballs on him as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, right? I think having the opportunity games in these kind of stages is going to give these guys the opportunity to be watched by so many scouts and by other clubs, big clubs especially. I thought Omar was really close to a deal. He was linked to big clubs, especially to Atletico Madrid before they ended up taking Romero from Tottenham, right? I mean, I think he was one of the names that they were looking at. I was expecting for a kind of a move because of how well he did along with Gustavo Gomez during the World Cup. But maybe in a couple months we're talking about that situation. I'm still waiting for moves from other players. I mean, I'm stuck with this Matias Galarza situation. I mean, people are talking more and more here as the days go by because he is yet to leave River. He's still under contract with that team. He's yet to play a single game after the World Cup, and we're headed into the friendlies that we have in the U.S. So I'm clearly taking him out of that list just because he doesn't even know where he's gonna play yet. So I mean, he's been even linked to Cerro Olimpia guys these last couple of days. That would be crazy for me just because of how well he did during the World Cup. I can't believe that no teams from Europe or from Brazil, the big leagues, nobody's trying to hire him as of right now. But this could be down to the wire kind of transfer. I mean, I don't know what you guys are thinking about this situation, but Matias Galazza should already be playing for somebody.
It is weird, Ralph. Before you get into that, I want to mention Diego Gomez's schedule for Brighton. They're playing Monaco, Panathinaikos, Getafe, Universitat Cracovia, Jumbo Lech, that's a team in the Czech Republic, and Kaunu Zagres of Lithuania. So, but anyway, yeah, so that's also a title that Brighton can definitely try to go and win there. But yeah, going back to the Matias Galarza situation, it's so weird. It's so weird that he hasn't found a club yet with days before the end of the transfer window.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation. I mean, he was at the Clásico with Cotonoves, with the president of Olimpia, so he was sat there. So I mean, that's I'm sure not helping any rumors. And that's what 2 or 3 days before River Plate played the Sudamericana tie, and then we saw that after the Sudamericana exit for River, which he's still contracted by them, he posted a like throwback Thursday of knocking out Germany on penalties because, of course, River went out on penalties, and that stirred up a lot of interest. But he's not. I mean, River let go of him a long time ago. That there's that that bridge is not getting mended. But to Fede's point, it's strange to think that he would go from River to Paraguay. I mean, with all due respect to Olimpia and Cerro, that's not where he needs to be going. He needs to go. I think Brazil would be perfect for him. I mean, he has that physicality, and I think he could do well in Brazil. And he's played there before, right, in the past. Or maybe back to the US because he was at Atlanta on loan. That didn't work out. The MLS can be a bit complicated with obviously with salary caps and that kind of thing. But you just feel like, yeah, he's got somewhere bigger to go, especially after the World Cup he gave and the quality he has. So that is a strange situation. And what, we're 28th of August. I mean, there's not long to resolve it. There's so like Fede says, maybe it comes down to the why. Maybe there is something there, and they're just holding on, pushing the Olympia rumors just to try and make some little negotiations there. But it does seem very strange that we're not talking about Galarza signing for a new club yet.
Very weird after all. We just want to close out with one more thing. Obviously, we had the Premier League start this weekend with the performances of Diego Gomez, Omar Alderete, and Julio Enciso all playing in some sort of role, actually. If we go to the first game, Julio Enciso looked very good, Ralph. He had a really good start. He set up the assist for the first goal. And then he got subbed out for an apparent muscle pull, I guess, but apparently he's fine. But then the second goal from because Sunderland scored afterwards, but then the second goal was actually due to an Omar Alderete failure of clearing the ball. It led the ball to Ipswich to score, then get their first win. Diego Gomez also played a role. He got the assist in one of the goals for Brighton's 4-0 win against Aston Villa. So Paraguayans have been doing well this week, either in a good or in a bad way to start.
Yeah, they've been in the action, right? I mean, Enciso first was man of the match performance. He got player of the match, and he was at his best, you know. I mean, when he plays like that, you're reminded of how good he can be when he has a bit of space, when he's given that free role. I think we talked about that, right? He's gonna have that luxury at the moment, and if he can take advantage, then this is gonna be great because obviously if Ipswich get in the position where they're not they're fighting relegation. Maybe they can't be quite as open and free. I mean, but that was great to see. And yeah, Valderete it was a strange situation because he didn't start the game. And so he came in as a sub. And I think he came in almost a bit cold, right? I think, Alderete needs to just start matches and play 90 minutes as a central defender. So I'm sure that hopefully that's his one error for the season, and then he'll be back to his consistent standard. And for Diego Gomez, I mean, that whole Brighton game was incredible, and it was the perfect game for Diego Gomez because Brighton pressed so high and were pushing and winning the ball high up, and he loves being part of that. He was playing on the right, but he was able to come inside and kind of participate in the box. And oh yeah, it was I mean, that was just, I only watched that first half of Brighton Villa, but that's all I needed to see, right? I mean, they blew them apart and
That was the only score of the game. That's
yeah,
all
they
that
didn't, there were
mattered.
no goals in the second half, right? It took the foot off the gas, but no, looked really good. And especially for him that he'd already just played against Tromsø, of course, and then he had to play that game. So he's playing those regular, every 3 days. I think that was a great sign.
Yeah, big roles for our guys and their team this season in Premier League team. So looking forward to it. I mean, I was able to catch up with Julio Enciso's Premier League debut, and I really loved what I saw from him. He looked so natural, he looked like he fit right in with the rest of the team also, and he knew what he was wanted, what he could do in the game, and he really made the difference on the counter attack. If you're going to give him that much space, he could be a difference maker and also a playmaker, right? Because he ended up giving the assist. So I think they're gonna give him that kind of role in this team. I saw him linking up with the Brazilian. I think now they signed Ezequiel Palacios, who also plays for the Argentinian national team. So that could be an interesting link up also with them playing together. I mean, I was looking at the numbers of everything they ended up bringing. I'm talking about Julian Cesa's team, and they ended up I mean, spending a lot of money, and so they invested a lot into this team. I'm really looking forward to what could be the season for them, how it could look out, especially with this Julian Enciso starting the year off just so hot, making a difference, and kind of unstoppable for in certain moments. I think we're just gonna see this Julian Enciso evolve, and hopefully his first goal comes right away.
Absolutely. We'll be keeping an eye, as we always do here on Guarani Vision, as we close out another episode. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.